For 10 years, Anya Blackwood was the perfect accessory on the arm of her husband, the ruthless venture capitalist Harrison Blackwood. Her life was a curated exhibition of his success. Her opinions muted her style, dictated by his conservative taste. The Metropolitan Vanguard Gala was supposed to be Harrison's ultimate triumph, a night to solidify his position among New York's elite. Anya chose a dress that for the first time felt like her own, a piece of art that spoke to a part of her she had long suppressed. But on the night that was meant to be his crowning achievement in front of everyone who mattered, he didn't just criticize her dress, he destroyed her. What he didn't know was that the designer was in the room, and he was about to change everything. The air in the penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park was thick with the scent of lilies and impending pressure. It was the scent of Harrison Blackwood's ambition. Anya Petrova Blackwood stood before the full-length gilt-edged mirror, her reflection a stranger in a dress that felt like a second skin. For a decade, her wardrobe had been a uniform of quiet submission, beige navy and black sheath dresses, elegant but forgettable, chosen to complement her husband's power, never to challenge it. She was the tasteful silent partner, the human equivalent of a firm handshake and a solid stock portfolio. But not tonight. Tonight she wore the sea. The dress was a creation of layered silk organza in shades of deep teal cerulean and seafoam green, cascading from a structured, asymmetrical bodice. It moved with the fluidity of water, shimmering under the recessed lighting of her dressing room. Intricate hand-stitched silver threadwork traced patterns like foam on a breaking wave across the fabric. It was bold, unconventional, and breathtakingly beautiful. It was for the first time in a very long time her. She had discovered it in a small, exclusive boutique in Soho, tucked away on a cobblestone street. The designer was a name whispered with reverence in avant-garde circles, but not yet a household brand Alessio Moretti. There was no price tag, only a simple card that read, Moretti Atelier. Buying it had been an act of silent rebellion, a secret she had hugged to herself for weeks. The click of the bedroom door latch was as sharp as a gunshot. Harrison entered already in his flawlessly tailored Tom Ford tuxedo. His eyes, the color of slate, scanned her from head to toe. There was no admiration, only assessment. He adjusted his cufflinks, a nervous tick he reserved for moments of high-stakes performance. "What is that?" he asked, his voice deceptively calm. "It's my dress for the gala." Anya replied, her own voice barely a whisper, her confidence already beginning to fray under his gaze. "I see that," he said, walking a slow circle around her, his expression hardening. "I thought we agreed on the Carolina Herrera, the navy one. It's classic, appropriate." Appropriate was Harrison's favorite word. It was the yardstick by which he measured every aspect of their lives. His business deals were appropriate. Their friends were appropriate. Her existence was meant to be appropriate. "I thought this was special," Anya ventured. "For the Vanguard Gala, it's about art innovation. It's about securing the final round of funding from the Atherton Trust," he corrected his voice, losing its calm veneer. "William Atherton is 78 years old. His wife Beatrice thinks anything brighter than pewter is garish. You look like a mermaid caught in a fishing net, Anya. Is that the impression you want to make? That the wife of Harrison Blackwood is whimsical, unserious?" Every word was a carefully aimed dart. He wasn't just criticizing a dress. He was dismantling her judgment, her identity. The joy she had felt moments before curdled into a familiar cold dread in the pit of her stomach. "I just wanted to wear something beautiful," she said, her voice pleading. "The Herrera is beautiful. It's sophisticated." "This," he gestured dismissively at the Moretti creation, "is a costume. Go and change, we're late." He didn't wait for a reply. He turned and walked out, leaving the scent of his expensive cologne and her own humiliation hanging in the air. Anya looked at her reflection again. For a fleeting second, she saw what he saw: a foolish woman in a ridiculous dress. The vibrant colors seemed to mock her. She thought about the navy dress hanging in the closet, safe, predictable, invisible. It was the sensible choice, the appropriate choice. But then something shifted. 10 years of suppressed desires, of bitten-back opinions, of shrinking herself to fit into his world, coalesced into a single point of defiance. She thought of the way the silk felt against her skin. The thrill of her secret purchase, the small, flickering flame of self that this dress represented. Taking it off would be extinguishing that flame completely. With trembling hands, she picked up her silver clutch. She did not change. She walked out of the dressing room and met Harrison by the door. His face tightened into a mask of cold fury. "I see you've decided to make this evening difficult," he said, his voice low and menacing. "I'm wearing this dress, Harrison," Anya said, amazed at the steadiness of her own voice. He stared at her for a long, silent moment, a battle of wills playing out in the space between them. Finally, he gave a curt, angry nod. "Fine. But when William Atherton looks at you like you're a piece of modern art, he doesn't understand and walks away from a $50 million investment that's on you. Your little fashion statement will have cost us dearly. Remember that." The ride down in the private elevator was silent. The journey in the back of the chauffeured Maybach was even quieter, a cocoon of black leather and palpable rage. Anya stared out at the glittering lights of Manhattan, feeling utterly alone. She was wearing a masterpiece, but all she felt was the weight of her husband's shame. She had won a small battle, but she had a terrible feeling she was about to lose the war. The car pulled up to the grand entrance of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and as the door opened, the roar of the crowd and the flash of cameras felt less like a welcome and more like the sound of an impending execution. The great hall of the Met had been transformed into an ethereal forest of light and shadow, a testament to the Gala's theme, luminous wilds. Projections of enchanted woods dappled the ancient stone walls, and towering sculptures of polished chrome and glass mimicked otherworldly flora. It was a space designed to celebrate the bold and the innovative, yet the invisible currents of old money and rigid hierarchy were as strong as ever. As Anya and Harrison stepped onto the red carpet, a wave of camera flashes blinded her. Harrison, ever the performer, plastered a charming smile on his face, his hand gripping Anya's arm just a little too tightly. His smile didn't reach his eyes. His touch wasn't supportive. It was a vice, a warning. The whispers started almost immediately. Anya could feel the stares, the subtle shifts in posture from the other guests as she passed. The women draped in couture from globally recognized houses like Chanel, Dior, and Valentino gave her dress quick, dismissive glances. Their polite smiles were thin, their eyes dissecting. They saw the unfamiliar silhouette, the audacious color palette, and labeled it trying too hard. The men simply looked past her, their eyes seeking out Harrison, the man of the hour. "Harrison, darling." A voice like shattered glass cut through the din. Genevieve Dubois, a skeletal socialite, whose family fortune was generations old. Air kissed the space beside Harrison's cheek. Her eyes, sharp and predatory, raked over Anya. "Genevieve." Harrison greeted his smile, becoming more genuine. Genevieve was a key social gatekeeper. Her approval mattered. "What an artistic choice, Anya." Genevieve purred, her gaze lingering on the silver threadwork with blatant disdain. "Did you design it yourself?" The question was a clear insult, implying a lack of professional polish, a homemade eccentricity. Before Anya could formulate a reply, Harrison laughed, a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. "Hardly. Anya's in an experimental phase, it seems. We were just discussing the fine line between avant-garde and amateur." The barb landed exactly as intended. It positioned him as the long-suffering, sophisticated husband, and her as the foolish, clueless wife. Genevieve's thin lips curved into a triumphant smirk. She had drawn blood, and Harrison had helped her twist the knife. Anya felt a hot flush of shame creep up her neck. She wanted the marble floor to swallow her whole. They moved on, but the scene had set the tone for the evening. Harrison guided her through the throng, introducing her to potential investors and corporate titans. With each introduction, he preemptively apologized for her appearance, with his eyes a subtle roll, a slight shake of his head that only the person he was talking to could see. He was publicly disowning her piece by piece. The true nadir of the evening arrived as they stood near the grand staircase, speaking with William Atherton himself. He was a formidable man, with a stern face and a reputation for traditionalism. His wife Beatrice, a woman who looked like she was carved from ivory, stared at Anya's dress as if it were a personal offense. Harrison was in the middle of a passionate pitch about a new green energy fund when William Atherton interrupted him. "Blackwood," he said, his voice a gravelly rumble. He gestured toward Anya with his chin. "Your wife, she's vibrant." Beatrice sniffed audibly. "It's certainly a lot of color." This was Harrison's moment to defend her, to own the choice, to present them as a unified front. He could have said, "Yes, isn't it stunning? Anya has a fantastic eye." He could have saved her. He did the opposite. He let out a short, self-deprecating sigh and leaned in conspiratorially. "William, Beatrice, you have to forgive her. She has a big heart and a passion for these artistic endeavors. I try to guide her towards more classic sensibilities, but sometimes her enthusiasm gets the better of her. I'm hoping it's a phase that will pass." He said it with a smile, as if sharing a charming but embarrassing family secret. He had painted her as a child who didn't know any better. A flighty, uncontrollable woman whose taste was an unfortunate affliction he had to endure. He had reduced her to a liability in a sea-green dress. Anya felt the blood drain from her face. It was no longer just about the dress. It was a public declaration of her worthlessness in his world. Beatrice Atherton gave a sympathetic little pat on Harrison's arm, a gesture of solidarity against the bewildering folly of his wife. William Atherton simply grunted and changed the subject back to quarterly projections. The conversation moved on, but Anya was no longer a part of it. She was an effigy of shame standing frozen beside them. The vibrant colors of her dress felt like a jester's motley. Harrison's words echoed in her ears, each syllable a fresh wound. Forgive her. Guide her. A phase that will pass. He had not just shamed her outfit. He had shamed her publicly and irrevocably. When the Athertons finally moved on, Harrison turned to her, his face a thundercloud. "Are you happy now?" He hissed, his voice a venomous whisper that was more cutting than any shout. You saw the look on her face. You and your ridiculous dress. You couldn't just be normal for one night. The one night that mattered. He didn't wait for her answer. He turned his back on her and strode toward the bar to network, leaving her completely and utterly alone in the middle of the most important party of their lives. The shimmering lights of the gala blurred through the tears welling in her eyes. She was an exhibit in a museum, a spectacle of humiliation for all to see. All she wanted was to disappear. She turned blindly and fled towards a darkened corridor, away from the prying eyes and the crushing weight of her husband's contempt. The corridor was a blessed relief, a cool, quiet artery, branching off from the heart of the gala. It led towards a lesser-known wing of the museum, the air growing still and smelling faintly of aged paper and wood polish. Anya found a secluded alcove, partially hidden by a large potted fern, and sagged against the wall. The tears she had been holding back finally fell silent and hot, tracing paths through her carefully applied makeup. She felt stripped bare. Harrison's words had been more than just an insult. They were a verdict on her entire existence within their marriage. She was an accessory that had malfunctioned, an asset that had depreciated. The dress, which had felt like a declaration of independence, now seemed like evidence of her foolishness. She wrapped her arms around herself, the beautiful silk, a cold comfort against her shivering skin. She had to leave. Not just the party, but the penthouse, the marriage, the entire hollow life she had been living. But the thought was terrifying, a leap into an abyss without a safety net. La tempesta e la quiete, a voice low and melodic, with a distinct Italian accent, spoke from the shadows. The storm and the calm, both reside in the same sea. Anya startled, quickly wiping at her tears. A man emerged from the deeper shadows of the corridor. He was tall and lean, with sharp, intelligent features, dark hair silvering at the temples, and eyes that held a surprising depth of empathy. He was dressed in a simple, impeccably cut black suit, without a tie, his white shirt open at the collar. He looked effortlessly elegant, a stark contrast to the stiff formality of the other men at the gala. "I'm sorry," Anya stammered, feeling exposed. "I was just getting some air." "There is no need to apologize for feeling," he said gently, his gaze falling to the cascading fabric of her dress. He didn't look at it with judgment or confusion, but with a profound, almost reverent appreciation. "It is a brave choice." Anya gave a bitter, watery laugh. "Brave or foolish? My husband seems to think the latter. Apparently, I look like a mermaid caught in a fishing net." She repeated Harrison's insult, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. The man's expression didn't change, but a flicker of something understanding, perhaps disdain, for the source of the comment passed through his eyes. "Then your husband is a man who looks at the sea and sees only the potential to drown," he replied smoothly. "He does not see the power, the depth, the life teeming beneath the surface. He does not understand that the net," he gestured to the delicate silver threadwork, "is not a trap. It is a constellation. It is the starlight on the water." His words were so unexpected, so poetic, that Anya was momentarily speechless. He wasn't just offering a hollow compliment. He was translating the very essence of the dress back to her. He saw what she had seen. He understood. How did you know that?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. He smiled a slow, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Because I am the fisherman who stitched the stars." Anya stared at him, her mind struggling to connect the dots. The exclusive Soho boutique, the whispers of a reclusive genius, the card that read, "Moretti Atelier." "You're Alessio Moretti?" she breathed. I am, he confirmed with a slight bow of his head. And you, Signora, have made my creation come alive. I have seen 100 models wear my clothes. They are mannequins. They display the fabric. But you give it a soul. Anya felt a fresh wave of tears threaten, but this time they were born of gratitude, not humiliation. Here was the creator of her shame, her folly, and he was calling it art. He was validating the very choice that had led to her public disgrace. My husband, she began, then stopped, unsure of what to say. He believes this dress may have cost him a $50 million deal. Alessio Moretti's gaze was unwavering. A man who would value $50 million over the spirit of his own wife is a man who is truly poor. The loss is his, not yours. He took a small step closer, his demeanor radiating a quiet strength. I saw what happened out there. I saw his performance. The world he inhabits, it is a cage of gold paint on iron bars. It demands conformity because it fears authenticity. He paused, his eyes searching hers. You are not meant for a cage, Signora Blackwood. This dress was not a mistake. It was a message, from you to yourself. The question is, are you ready to listen to it? His words resonated deep within her, striking a chord that had been silent for a decade. He wasn't just a designer. He was a kindred spirit who saw past the facade to the person suffocating underneath. He wasn't offering pity. He was offering a perspective, a lifeline of clarity in her sea of confusion. What do I do? She whispered the question raw and real. For now. Alessio said, his voice practical but kind. You do not hide in corridors. You hold your head high. You are not a fool in a costume. You are a woman wearing a masterpiece. Let them look. Their judgment is a reflection of their own limitations, not your worth. He offered her his arm. Allow me to escort you back. It is almost time for the design awards. I believe the evening is about to become far more interesting. Anya hesitated for only a moment. Taking his arm felt like a monumental act, a shifting of allegiances. But as her hand rested on the cool fabric of his suit, she didn't feel fear. She felt a flicker of hope. For the first time all night, she wasn't Harrison Blackwood's shamed wife. She was Alessio Moretti's honored guest. And as they walked back towards the glittering heart of the Gala, she felt the strength of the sea rising within her. The storm was far from over, but for the first time she felt she might just be able to navigate it. Returning to the great hall on Alessio Moretti's arm was a profoundly different experience. The dynamic had shifted. Anya was no longer a lone, wilting figure. She was now accompanied by a man who moved with an effortless, magnetic confidence. People who had earlier dismissed her now looked again, their curiosity piqued. Who was this man who commanded such quiet authority, and why was he with Harrison Blackwood's eccentric wife? She spotted Harrison across the room, deep in a fawning conversation with a board member of the museum. He saw her, and his eyes narrowed first at her, then at the man whose arm she held. A flicker of confusion, then annoyance crossed his face. He clearly didn't recognize Alessio, who, despite his genius, eschewed the limelight and was notoriously private. To Harrison, he was just some anonymous European, and his presence at Anya's side was another inexplicable act of defiance. He gave a sharp, almost imperceptible shake of his head, a command for her to disengage and return to her designated position, his shadow. Anya met his gaze across the crowded room, and for the first time, did not look away. Bolstered by Alessio's words, she held his stare, her chin held high. She gave him a small, neutral nod, and then deliberately turned her attention back to Alessio, a silent and definitive rejection of his command. She felt a thrilling jolt of power at the small act. "He does not look pleased," Alessio murmured, his eyes twinkling, as he guided her to a small table near the main stage. "He's accustomed to my obedience," Anya replied, her voice steady. Just then, the lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd. The host of the evening, a famous art critic, stepped up to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to a very special part of our evening, the Vanguard Award for Innovation in Design. This award honors a creator who pushes boundaries, who challenges convention, and who reminds us that fashion at its highest level is not mere clothing, but wearable art." Anya's heart began to beat a little faster. Harrison, she noticed, was now watching the stage intently, his irritation momentarily forgotten. This was the part of the evening that mattered, the spectacle the power plays, the public anointing of greatness. This year's recipient is a man who has largely avoided the spectacle of the industry, letting his work speak for itself. The critic continued. His designs are known for their structural brilliance, their emotional depth, and their uncompromising vision. He is a poet who writes in silk and thread. It is my profound honor to announce the winner of this year's Vanguard Award is Alessio Moretti. A wave of stunned, then enthusiastic applause swept through the hall. The name was known to the true connoisseurs, the inner circle of the fashion world. Now it was being broadcast to everyone. Anya turned to Alessio, her eyes wide with shock and delight. He simply smiled at her, squeezed her hand gently, and rose from his chair. Across the room, Harrison's face was a canvas of disbelief. He stared at the man who had been at his wife's side, this nobody now being celebrated on the main stage. The gears were turning in his head, connecting the dots with a dawning, sickening horror. The boutique, the dress, his wife. He looked from Alessio on stage to Anya at the table, then back again. His perfectly composed facade was beginning to crack. Alessio accepted the heavy sculptural award and stepped to the microphone. The room was silent, expectant. "Thank you." He began, his voice calm and clear, filling the vast space. "Thank you to the committee. It is an honor." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. When we speak of design of fashion, we often speak of trends of commerce, of what is in or out. We create rules, appropriate colors, acceptable silhouettes. We build beautiful, elegant cages for people to live in. We tell them that to be safe is to be successful, that to be understood is to be valued. His eyes scanned the room, seeming to linger for a fraction of a second on Harrison. But innovation, true art, is not born from safety. It is born from courage. It is born from the spirit that refuses the cage. It is about expressing the soul, not just covering the body. An artist can create a masterpiece, but it remains static, lifeless, until it finds its true subject. It needs a muse. He held up the award. I am grateful for this. But my greatest honor tonight is not receiving this award. My greatest honor is seeing my work as it was intended to be seen, worn by the very woman who inspired its creation. The air in the room crackled with tension. Every eye was on him. Harrison looked as though he had been turned to stone, his face pale with shock. Genevieve Dubois' jaw was slack. Alessio Moretti raised his hand and pointed directly, unequivocally at Anya. The collection you see previewed tonight, the one that is being honored, is called Anima del Mare. soul of the sea. It was inspired by a woman of quiet strength, of hidden depths, of a spirit that longs for the freedom of the ocean, even when trapped on the shore. It was inspired by her resilience, her grace, and her quiet rebellion. Ladies and gentlemen, my muse, the soul of my work, is Anya Blackwood. The spotlight operator, after a moment of stunned confusion, swung a brilliant beam of light onto Anya's table. A collective gong rippled through the hall. Hundreds of pairs of eyes that had earlier looked at her with pity and disdain were now staring in awe and disbelief. The dress was no longer a bizarre, questionable choice. It was the centerpiece of the year's most celebrated collection. Anya wasn't the foolish wife in a gaudy outfit. She was the inspiration, the muse of a genius. The silence was broken by a sudden explosive round of applause, louder and more sincere than before. It was a recognition, not just of the designer, but of the dramatic narrative that had just unfolded before their eyes. Anya sat bathed in light and sound, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked across the room at her husband. Harrison stood frozen, his face a mask of utter and complete devastation. His carefully constructed world had been shattered in a single public moment. He had shamed his wife for being a masterpiece, and the entire world had just witnessed his catastrophic misjudgment. The humiliation he had inflicted on her had been returned to him 100-fold. The ride home was not silent like the one before. It was a vacuum, a void, where sound was afraid to exist. Harrison had said nothing as they were mobbed by a sudden crush of photographers and reporters on their way out, all shouting questions at a stunned Anya. "Mrs. Blackwood, how long have you known Moretti? When did you become his muse? What did you think of your husband's comments tonight?" Alessio's security team had efficiently carved a path for them to their car, but the damage was done. The story was already flashing across phone screens throughout the city. Inside the Maybach, Harrison sat rigidly on the opposite side of the spacious back seat. Staring out the window, his jaw clenched so tightly, Anya thought his teeth might crack. He was a statue of pure, unadulterated rage. The city lights streaked across his face, illuminating the stark lines of his fury. The moment the penthouse door closed behind them, the vacuum imploded. "Are you out of your mind?" he roared, spinning on her. His voice, usually so controlled, was raw and explosive. "My muse! My God, Anya! Do you have any idea what you've done? What I've done?" Anya's own voice was surprisingly strong, fortified by the night's impossible events. "I wore a dress. Harrison, you were the one who called me a fool in front of William Atherton." "I was doing damage control," he shot back, stalking towards her. "For your insane career-suiciding choice, I was trying to save a $50 million deal that you set on fire with your little arts and crafts project. It wasn't a project. It was a Moretti the Vanguard Award winner. I don't give a damn if it was made by God himself," he bellowed, his face inches from hers. "Your job was to be elegant, supportive, and invisible. Your one job. Instead, you collude with this Italian tailor to make me look like the biggest idiot in New York City. Everyone is laughing at me. Atherton called me just before we left. The deal's off. He said he doesn't invest with men who can't even manage their own household. Your household, Anya, you..." The accusation hung in the air, venomous and absurd. He wasn't angry that he had hurt her. He was furious that his abuse had been exposed. He saw her not as a person who had been vindicated, but as a traitor who had engineered his downfall. "So this is what it's about?" Anya said, a chilling clarity cutting through her fear. Your reputation, your deal. It was never about me, was it, whether I was happy or hurt or humiliated? It was only ever about how I reflected on you. Of course it's about how you reflect on me. He screamed, his control completely gone. That's the deal. That's what this is. I give you this. He gestured wildly around the opulent penthouse. This life, this security, this access, and in return you play the part. You don't go rogue. You don't become some designer's muse behind my back. How long has this been going on? Are you sleeping with him? The question was so vile, so far from the pure artistic respect Alessio had shown her, that it snapped the last thread of her old self. The timid, accommodating Anya vanished, replaced by a woman forged in the fires of that evening's humiliation and subsequent triumph. No, she said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous calm that was far more intimidating than his shouting. I am not sleeping with him, and the fact that your mind immediately goes there shows just how little you understand about anything that isn't measured in dollars and cents. You can't comprehend a relationship based on mutual respect, on seeing something in a person that isn't about what you can get from them. She took a step back, creating space between them both literally and metaphorically. You talk about the deal. Let's talk about the deal, Harrison. The deal was that I would support your career. I would host your dinners, charm your clients, and stand by your side. I did that. For 10 years I did that. I sublimated myself so completely that I barely knew who I was anymore. But the deal was never that I would let you destroy what was left of my spirit in a public forum for the sake of your ego. Harrison's face shifted from rage to a desperate, manipulative cunning. He saw he was losing. Anya, listen, he said, his voice softening, becoming cloying. Okay. I was angry. I was under a lot of pressure. I said things I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. But you have to see this from my perspective. This Moretti character, he used you to create a spectacle. He didn't use me, Anya countered, shaking her head. He saw me. There's a difference. You, on the other hand, you've been using me as a prop for a decade, a prop you decided to throw away tonight when it didn't match the scenery. She walked past him towards their bedroom. Her movements were calm, deliberate. What are you doing? He asked, a note of panic in his voice. I'm packing a bag, she said, without looking back. Panic turned to disbelief, then back to fury. You're what? You're not going anywhere. Don't be ridiculous. You can't leave. Everything you have is because of me. She stopped at the bedroom door and turned to face him one last time. The immense living room, with its priceless art and panoramic views of the city, looked like a beautiful hollow tomb. You're wrong, Harrison, she said, her voice ringing with newfound certainty. Everything I have might be because of you, but everything I am, that's something you've been trying to extinguish for 10 years. Tonight you failed, and I'm not giving you another chance. She closed the bedroom door behind her, the soft click echoing the final definitive end of their life together. Outside the door, Harrison stood alone in the monument to his success, finally understanding the true cost of the night. He hadn't just lost a deal. He had lost the one person who, in her own quiet way, had been the masterpiece of his collection all along. And he had no one to blame but himself. The 3 weeks following the gala were a blur of muted chaos. Anya didn't move into a glamorous hotel or a chic Soho loft funded by Alessio Moretti. That would have simply been trading one gilded cage for another, confirming Harrison's ugliest suspicions. Instead, she did something for herself. She took a small, sunlit apartment in Greenwich Village, using the money from a trust her grandmother had left her years ago, a fund Harrison had always dismissed as pocket money, but which now felt like a declaration of financial independence. The apartment was modest compared to the penthouse, but it was hers. She filled it not with minimalist modern art, approved by a decorator, but with second-hand books, pots of unruly herbs for the windowsill, and canvases she bought from a local art supply store. For the first time in years, she picked up a charcoal pencil, the feel of its dusty texture on her fingertips, a forgotten comfort. She didn't try to create a masterpiece. She just drew, lines, shadows, faces from memory. It was clumsy at first, but it was a language she was slowly reteaching herself to speak. The world, of course, did not leave her alone. The story of the Muse and the Mogul had become a sensation, a modern-day fairy tale spun by gossip columnists and lifestyle bloggers. Her picture was everywhere. She was approached by talk shows and magazines, all eager for the sordid details of her abusive marriage and her whirlwind romance with the brilliant designer. She declined every single one. Her story was not for sale. Her phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls from Harrison. They began as furious demands, then shifted to desperate pleas, and finally settled into pathetic, self-pitying monologues. He was sorry. He was a fool. He couldn't live without her. He blamed the pressure, the Athertons, even the lighting at the Gala, everyone and everything but his own cruelty. She read them not with anger anymore, but with a distant clinical pity. He wasn't a monster. He was just a hollow man, terrified of his own reflection. She never replied. Alessio Moretti, true to his character, was a model of restraint and respect. He called her once, 2 days after the Gala. "Anya," he said, his voice warm over the phone. "I want to ensure you are well. The storm I predicted seems to have made landfall." "It has," she confirmed, "but the house is still standing, or at least I'm building a new one." "Good," he said simply. "My offer of friendship stands with no expectations. When you are ready, I would be honored if you would visit the atelier. There is more I would like to show you, not as a muse to be looked at, but as a collaborator to see." She took him up on the offer a week later. The Moretti atelier was not the slick, sterile showroom she expected. It was a sprawling, light-filled space in a converted warehouse in the meat-packing district, filled with sketches, bolts of fabric, and half-finished creations on dress forms. It felt less like a fashion house and more like a sculptor's studio. Alessio didn't talk about Harrison or the Gala. Instead, he walked her through his process. He showed her his inspiration boards, which were covered not with pictures of models, but with photos of eroding coastlines, iridescent beetle wings, and fractals found in nature. He spoke about how he translated the mathematics of a seashell's spiral into the drape of a sleeve, how the color of a stormy sky became a unique dye. He showed her the rest of the Anima del Mare collection. She saw dresses that evoked the bioluminescence of the deep ocean jackets, structured like coral reefs, and gowns that flowed like tidal pools. In each piece, she saw a piece of herself, or rather the self she was rediscovering. The strength, the complexity, the hidden beauty. "I didn't just see you that day in the gallery when you first looked at the dress," he explained, picking up a bolt of silk that shimmered from deep purple to silver. "I saw the way you truly looked at the art around you. You weren't just glancing. You were conversing with it. I saw a depth of perception that most people ignore. That is what I wanted to capture." Their friendship deepened over the following weeks, built on a shared love for art and a mutual understanding of a world beyond the superficial. It wasn't a romance, it was something more profound, a meeting of minds. He would invite her to museums, not as a date, but as a fellow scholar. They would debate the merits of Rothko's use of color or the lines of a Brancusi sculpture. Through him, Anya reconnected with her own dormant passion art history. She had a master's degree in the subject, earned before she met Harrison, a fact he had always treated as a quaint, useless hobby. She started volunteering at a small contemporary art gallery, downtown, run by an old acquaintance from her university days, Dr. Evelyn Reed. She wrote catalogue descriptions, helped curate shows for emerging artists, and spent her days surrounded by the raw, challenging energy of new creation. She was earning very little, but she felt richer than she ever had in the penthouse. Meanwhile, the fallout for Harrison was real and sustained. The story had cast him in an unforgiving light. In the cutthroat world of venture capital, perception is reality. He was no longer seen as a ruthless visionary, but as a petty bully. Whispers followed him. Partners became wary. That initial $50 million loss was just the beginning. Other investors, spooked by the display of poor judgment and emotional volatility, began pulling back. His business partner, the pragmatic Brendan Shaw, started holding meetings without him. The Blackwood Capital Ventures empire, built on an image of infallible strength, was beginning to show deep structural cracks. He had tried to control the narrative and had lost it completely. One afternoon, while cataloguing a new collection of photographs at the gallery, Anya looked around at the vibrant, chaotic space, her hands smudged with ink, and felt a sense of peace that was so pure it almost made her weep. She wasn't an accessory or a muse. She was a creator, a curator, a participant in her own life. She was sketching out a new design for her future on a canvas that was entirely her own. 6 months passed. The chill of autumn gave way to the crisp blanket of a New York winter. The gossipy fervor over the Gala incident had faded, replaced by the city's usual relentless churn of new scandals and new celebrities. Anya had used that time to build quietly and methodically. Her volunteer position at the gallery under the mentorship of Dr. Reed had evolved into a paid role as an associate curator. She had a natural eye not just for art, but for the stories behind it. She championed unknown artists with a passion that was infectious, and the gallery was gaining a reputation for its bold, insightful exhibitions. Her friendship with Alessio had also blossomed into a powerful creative partnership. He valued her art historian's perspective, her ability to see the lineage and context of design. She wasn't just his muse, she was his intellectual confidant, his sounding board. He was preparing for his first major solo runway show in New York, and he had asked Anya to consult on the scenography to help design a stage and an atmosphere that would be as artistic as the clothes themselves. The night of the Moretti show was electric. It was held in a raw industrial space on the Chelsea piers, a far cry from the stuffy opulence of a traditional Fashion Week venue. The invitation list was the most exclusive in town. As the associate curator for the show's artistic direction, Anya wasn't a guest hidden at a table. She stood alongside the production team headset on clipboard in hand, a vital part of the machine. She wore a simple, elegant black jumpsuit of Alessio's design. Her hair pulled back, her face luminous with purpose. The show was a triumph. Titled Metamorphosis, the collection was a brilliant evolution of his work, and the stage design inspired by Anya's research into the art of kintsugi. The Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold was hailed as revolutionary. The models walked on a runway that looked like fractured earth, with veins of shimmering gold running through the cracks. It was a perfect metaphor for her own journey, finding beauty and strength in the broken places. After the final model had walked, and Alessio had taken his bow to a thunderous standing ovation, a press conference was held backstage. He insisted Anya join him at the podium. Mr. Moretti, the theme of breakage and repair is so powerful. What was the inspiration? A journalist from Vogue asked. Alessio smiled and gestured to Anya. The inspiration came from my collaborator, Ms. Petrova. She introduced me to the philosophy of kintsugi, the idea that an object is more beautiful for having been broken. It is a testament to its history, its resilience. This collection, and indeed this entire show, is as much her vision as it is mine. He called her Ms. Petrova, not Blackwood. It was a subtle but significant acknowledgement of her reclaimed identity. She spoke eloquently about the artistic philosophy, her voice confident and clear. She was no longer a silent accessory. She was a respected authority, speaking on her own terms. As the press conference ended and well-wishers swarmed them, a figure emerged from the edge of the crowd. It was Harrison. He looked diminished. His expensive suit seemed to hang off him. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by a desperate, haunted look in his eyes. He had lost weight. The whispers about Blackwood Capital's decline had evidently been true. "Anya," he said, his voice hoarse. He had somehow gotten past security. Alessio and the team around them tensed, but Anya held up a hand, a gesture of calm control. She faced her ex-husband. "Harrison," she said, her tone polite but distant. "I saw the show. It was amazing," he stammered. "What you've done, what you've become. I was wrong, Anya. I was a blind, arrogant fool. I see that now. Please, can we just talk? I miss you. I can change, we can start over." It was the plea she might have once dreamed of hearing. But listening to it now, it sounded hollow, pathetic. He wasn't praising her for her own sake. He was praising her because the world was now praising her. He hadn't changed. He had just lost. Anya looked at him not with hatred, but with a profound and final sense of closure. "There's nothing to talk about, Harrison," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "The person you miss doesn't exist anymore. You're right, you were a fool. But not just for what you did that night. You were a fool for not seeing the person who was standing next to you for 10 years. I'm not going backward. My life is finally moving forward." She turned away from him without another word, leaving him standing alone amidst the celebration of her new life. Alessio gave her a look of immense pride and subtly guided her towards a group of museum curators who were eager to speak with her. Later that evening, standing on the pier overlooking the dark, shimmering Hudson River, the city lights glittering like a carpet of fallen stars, Anya felt a deep, resonant peace. She had not just survived the storm, she had learned to sail it. She was no longer the reflection of someone else's success, nor was she merely an inspiration for an artist. She was the artist of her own life, taking the broken pieces and making them into something stronger, more beautiful, and infinitely more valuable. She was her own masterpiece. What an incredible journey of transformation. Anya Petrova's story is a powerful testament to the strength that lies dormant within all of us. She went from being a ghost in her own life, an invisible accessory to her husband's ambition, to the celebrated architect of her own destiny. Her story isn't just about a dress or a public shaming. It's about the moment one decides that their own voice is worth listening to, that their spirit is worth fighting for. It's a reminder that true value isn't found in the approval of others, but in the courage to be authentically ourselves, even if it means shattering the world we once knew. Her vindication wasn't just in her husband's downfall, but in her own rise, a masterpiece of her own making. Have you ever felt underestimated or silenced? Have you ever had to fight to reclaim your own identity? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas that empower and inspire. Thank you for listening.